This is a full guide to the Xunlai Junkyard Strike Mission challenge mode, which also includes the achievement Gaze into the Void, which is an even greater challenge than the actual challenge mode and gives you a title. First, let's go over the challenge mode mechanics. There are 3 phases, and each phase has its own enrage timer shown by the bar in the top right, inevitability of death. When the fight enrages, it isn't over yet, but you could last about 20 to 30 seconds afterwards. Since the bar resets in each phase, you should play as safely as possible in the first phases, just to keep as many people alive as you can until the final phase. The first phase will show you most of the mechanics you need to avoid to survive. Ankka will throw elixirs on the ground which will pulse damage and conditions. Just stand out of these. 3 players will get an orange circle on them. They need to bring these to the sides of the map, not to the center. You cannot stack them because they damage players when they are placed. The AoEs that spawn shortly after they are placed will instantly down you in 1 tick, so they need to be on the edge to give you as much space as possible. Then Zaitan's reaches will spawn. While they aren't much of a threat by themselves and do little damage, they can pull and knock players into other mechanics. Stability can allow you to ignore them, but they will stay there until killed or their defiance bar is broken. It is best to cleave down any nearby Zaitan reaches to give your squad room to move. Next are the hallucinations. There are 3 possible hallucinations that can spawn. 3 crate will travel across the platform, and surrounding them will be that same AoE that instantly nukes you. Whichever one is closer to you will exert a pull on you. Try to run straight through these, and if you get pulled into the AoE, immediately dodge outwards. The other potential hallucination is a lich that will target 1 player in the squad and walk towards them while pulling them towards them. It's easy to tell if you have the lich on you because you'll feel your character slipping away and you'll see that there is a line connecting you to them. This lich has the nuke AoE around it too, so you want to avoid leading it into the group. However, you don't want to move too far away from the group as well because Ankka likes to shoot poison volleys at the player furthest from her. A support can go off and heal them, but that isn't the most optimal strategy. What should be done is the player with the lich waits inside the group until the lich is decently close enough, then runs away from the lich off to the side. The rest of the squad can move to the other side of Ankka. The lich moves slow and will despawn, so you can reconvene shortly after. The last hallucination is the exploding quaggons. These will do extreme damage when they explode and spawn several in a row. Keep moving slightly out of their range, remembering that after a quaggon explodes, it's safe to go there, so the area that they cover is not as large as it looks, so long as your squad knows to back off the boss during this time. Ankka will also create more of these AoEs and hide in them herself, pulling all players in towards her, then porting around to others which she will pull you towards. Face your character away from the pull and run straight away from the direction it's pulling you, of course dodging out as soon as you get pulled inside if you do. Afterwards, Ankka will be at a distance from your squad because she's been porting around, which means people will be far away, which means she will opt to use the poison volley attack. This poison volley only happens when people are not in melee range, and it can do a lot of damage and condition damage to your entire party, which would be grouped up at this time. You want everyone to double dodge towards Ankka to avoid the volley, and at this time Ankka will also gain a break bar. So you run away from the suck, then you dodge, and then you CC. At 75% you progress to phase 2, run up the path without rushing too much, stay together. The same mechanics apply in this phase, but now there is the reanimated spites. As soon as you get there, Ankka will go invulnerable and summon 3 of these. Split up and CC their defiance bars. If Ankka finishes her channel before all of the spites are broken, she gains a stack of Power of the Void. For each stack, she gains drastically increased damage and damage reduction. Also, while she has the buff, her attacks will debuff party members who are hit by them, making them receive 50% less healing. Because the enrage timer is relevant, getting too many stacks of this can force an extremely safe comp to wipe. However, stacks Ankka gets in phase 2 will reset along with the enrage timer when getting to phase 3. After these spites are taken out, look for a reanimated hatred, which will pulse and mobilize on one of your party members. Just kill it so they can get back to the squad. Phase 3 stacks a debuff on every player called Devouring Darkness. Over time, it gets larger and deals damage to you. Remove this buff by standing in the white circles around the crystals at the 4 corners of the room. The crystals give a 15-second buff that prevents Devouring Darkness, so you don't need to stay in the crystals for long, just dip into them shortly. All of the other mechanics will occur during this time, making it difficult to conveniently go into the crystals at any point. Ankka will summon the reanimated spites during this phase. Likewise, you will need to split up and CC them all to prevent her from getting the massive buff. During this time, a reanimated antipathy will spawn. This eye will suck the life out of the crystals, and once their health reaches 0, that crystal is destroyed and you no longer can get the buff to remove your Devouring Darkness there anymore. If you are doing the challenge mode without the added achievement, you want to split up and CC the reanimated spites as your first priority. The antipathy can destroy 1 crystal per phase and you'd be fine. However, you can bring lots of CC to stop the spites and the antipathy. The DPS player should be CCing the antipathy and the spite near it, while the support players spread out to the others, since the antipathy needs damage and CC, while the spites only need CC. If a few crystals are destroyed, it isn't a big problem since there will only be 2 antipathy spawns before enrage anyways. If you handle the CCs well to prevent stacks, and you position well to not get killed by the hallucinations, this isn't that bad. However, the achievement Gaze into the Void requires an entirely new strategy. To get this achievement, you must defeat Ankka with 6 stacks of Power of the Void buff, meaning you must not CC any of the reanimated spites in phase 3. While this is strategically easier, the buffs it gives to Ankka make her deal much more damage and take much less damage. It's a very tight DPS check that requires your team to run an extremely aggressive composition, and that creates other issues. What we did was run 2 Conti Firebrands for quickness and cleansing, as well as the protection and resolution from their heal skills, then 2 Alacrity Spectres for range damage, swiftness, vigor, and plenty of barriers, which is the main reason why we took 6 Scourges as well. Once Ankka has the Power of the Void buff, she will reduce healing so much that you can't really heal that much. So barrier and damage mitigation is the best way to survive. We also ended up running no healers besides 1 Celestial Scourge with Transfusion to meet the strict DPS check. The Celi Scourge does a little bit of damage, but the Transfusion reses are so efficient that it allows everyone else to keep DPSing on the boss, while only the Celi Scourge will res. The Spectres can also target the person, kiting the Lich hallucination to tether them to give range support while still hitting the boss, since they'll often get a lot of pressure from the range poison volley. Not only did we downsize on healers, we downsized on CC. You only need to CC the spites in phase 2 and just zerg the antipathy down in phase 3. And if you fail to CC in phase 2, it doesn't really matter that much since it resets anyways. That's why your composition should be built entirely for phase 3. Our Scourges ran Spectral Grasp to CC the Zaitan's reaches while also giving plenty of Shroud generation to give us barriers. Some ran Bone Minions to explode, which gives all of the Scourges Shroud because of something dying. The first 2 phases can easily be survived even with a few mistakes due to the Transfusion Scourge revives pulling allies out of the one-shot AoEs. If one person dies, obviously reset, but just making it to phase 3 with everyone alive is enough. When phase 2 ends, you can all stack up, get your cooldowns, do a ready check, and then let one person run ahead to start the 3rd phase. Since everyone gets ported in when it starts, they won't need to all come into the fight at staggered moments due to avoiding dangerous poison on the ground, but if you're all on voice chat and can coordinate it better, you can just run in together. The most important thing when handling phase 3 is understanding that it's a massive DPS race, and you should be greeting absolutely. But also that most of the damage your party takes can be avoided by playing aggressively. Ankka will do her poison volley only when players are far away, so you always want to be on top of Ankka to reduce damage taken and to easily have your group stacked for barriers and buffs. Splitting up is the best way to die and fail the DPS check. Go to the crystals very quickly to get the buff, then go right back to stacking on Ankka to avoid the poison volley being cast on you. When she has 6 stacks of the buff, this really taxes your squad. This is going to be an attempt on the Gaze into the Void achievement. Normally I wouldn't run a DPS meter, but I think this is probably like one of the only places in the game that actually requires it because the DPS check is so tight. The first 2 phases are pretty much the same, so it's the normal CM pretty much until phase 3. So we bring out the orange circles, put those on the sides. The Zaitan Reaches spawn. Our Scourges are taking Spectral Grasp, so they're all going to be using that right now. And that will CC those and allow us a lot more room to move around these exploding Quaggins, because we don't want to move too much, but we do want to have space to just get out of their AoE barely. And we stick together at all times pretty much, except when there are mechanics that force you to split up. Now here, as I say, we need to stick together. We kind of split up because we were straight in the middle of the room, but yeah, you want to stick together when the pull happens, and then you want to dodge towards the boss and then CC, because they'll always get the break bar here. So we get the break bar and then we burst. I've got the Lich on me, so I'm moving slightly away from the group, and we phase it so it just despawns, and now we head into phase 2. So I've got the short bow here, which allows me to make it to the far reanimated spite faster, so I can CC that quickly, and then the rest of my team doesn't need to use their movement. They can just CC the closer ones, and Spectres usually have a lot of CC anyways, though our team does have a lot less CC than a normal CM group would want, because the phase 3 doesn't really require any CC. And you can see one of the reanimated spites actually wasn't CC'd for whatever reason, and because of that, Ankka has a stack of Power of the Void. And while that's not a big deal because phase 2 is essentially going to reset when we transition to phase 3, it is not something you really want to be doing still. So yeah, not the best, but it's not the end of the run, because once we get to phase 3, that's the phase that matters. So just try to push through it, as I said, and just make sure that everyone stays alive. The hallucinations just pass through us, so we can focus on damage while there are no other mechanics happening, which you really want to take advantage of. The next thing that's going to happen is probably going to be the pull here. Yeah, the pull is going to happen, so we're stacking together, face away from the boss. You can greed for damage, but usually you want to just get your cooldowns back, then dodge in, CC the boss, and then burst. And now usually you'd be wanting to get like really close to the phase at this point, because generally if you prevent the boss from doing a second reanimated spite phase, that means that your damage is really good. But we're definitely going to miss that DPS check here because we gave a stack to the boss. And here you can see we're staying very tight for the Quaggins, and then we just group into the boss as soon as they're not on the boss anymore. That helps us to get a lot of damage and to stay together to avoid taking damage. Now we have to split up for the reanimated spites again. As I said, you wouldn't want to get a second phase of these, but since we have the buff, the boss is taking a lot less damage. But yeah, you really don't want to be giving that buff out. You usually will have enough CC even though your team is not speccing into CCs much. But yeah. So we're going to stack together here and try to survive the 3-stack Ankka in phase 2. We've got the elixirs out here, so we're just standing in between those and just DPSing the boss. The Lich is headed towards us, but it's in a pretty convenient spot. You can see the player who has the Lich on them is actually taking a lot of pressure, and I could have targeted them to tether them to heal them and give them barrier, but I didn't for whatever reason. So yeah, that's what your Spectres really need to do when the boss has stacks on them. But since it wasn't phase 3, I wasn't really trying too hard. So we're gonna get the boss down here. You can see the Zaitan's reaches are just being taken out by these spectral grasps. And now we're gonna phase into phase 3. So you can just take as long as you want here, but I precast my Venoms, and then I start the fight for my team, which is pretty nice because I can get double Venoms, which is really necessary to the burst of this fight. Both our Spectres are going to precast the Rotwall Venom on each other, and then I precast my Thieves Guild, and we all get the buff here, and then we stack on Ankka so we don't get the poison volley on us. You don't want to be standing in the crystals here too much because you want to be standing on Ankka essentially, but you do have to go into the crystals every once in a while. The crate hallucinations spawn here, so we back off. Our Selly Scourge pulls one of our allies out who wasn't paying attention apparently, and we have minimal setback because of that. And now we're just stacking on Ankka, just going into the white circle there very shortly and then getting straight on Ankka again. 29% isn't honestly the best. You want to maybe get to 28%, but we're on the reanimated antipathy now. I'm just spamming Shortbow 4, and then I pool my initiative and use my alacrity here, and then we're going to just save all of our damage to burst Ankka and get in melee range, obviously. So we're doing a lot of damage here because this is what we need to do, and there's no mechanics going on, so this is really important. The elixirs happen, but we have so much barrier that we don't really need to worry too much about that. Really, the poison volley is what matters. And the boss has 3 stacks right now, so you want to be careful. Damage can go high. The pull happens, and we need to run away. But remember, after the pull, you want to double dodge the volley, and then CC. So here I double dodge in, give out my alacrity, and then we're gonna do CC. I get the buff here, and then we're gonna burst the boss while they're broken. And we've actually got pretty good damage now because I think we're getting a little bit lucky on the mechanics and the positioning of the boss. It's not really giving us the worst stuff here. We've got the crate again, and we're in a pretty good position to avoid them. We go straight through. I'm going to use my leap to get through this safely, and then use my Thieves Guild again, give out my alacrity here, and conveniently we're sticking in the white circles while also stacking on Ankka. And here the Zaitan's reaches are spawning, but it instantly dies to cleave. We've also got the elixirs on us. I'm just going to give alacrity again, and we're in a pretty good spot. Ankka ports away, so we need to jump straight on Ankka to be able to prevent that poison volley from happening. But they also got the orange circles, so they have to be very careful. Here is the crate mechanic, and I actually leap backwards and go into the circle, but I get pulled out very quickly by the Selly Scourge, which is a really good convenience because I was barely in the down state and I can just keep DPSing again. Very minimal DPS loss there, and we survive. So yeah, I'm giving out barrier as well to my team, so there's a lot of support. We've got 10% left, and we've got the second reanimated spite phase. The antipathy is off to the side there, which is kind of inconvenient, but the AoEs disappear, and we're going to burst them. Not use too much of my cooldowns because I want to save those for the actual boss, and make sure not to CC the reanimated spite. Now once the boss has 6 stacks like this, they're essentially taking no damage, so this is still quite a far distance from actually clearing the boss. So we need to do a lot of damage. I don't bother reviving because the Selly Scourge doesn't do much damage and they can revive much quicker than me. I just want to keep spamming out my wells and using torment skills to get barrier out to my team because shroud equals barrier. And here's the pull. This is actually pretty good for us because the pull is a time where we're going to be able to CC afterwards. So We can dodge into the boss now. I didn't dodge, but we can CC now. And at this point, we want to burst very hard and still get our stacks of the buff there. But yeah, we want to be doing as much damage as possible. And the next thing that's going to happen is going to be the hallucinations. So we need to be very aware of that because we don't want to be throwing here. So yeah, we're stacking very tightly on Ankka. And okay, so we got the Quaggan hallucination. We are not really stacked too tightly here. I'm on Ankka still, but some others went a little bit off the path there. But yeah, because of that, they're taking a lot of pressure from the poison volley. But we go into Shroud, give out the barrier, and there's only 4% left. And the inevitability of death is not even that close. So we may not even go into Enrage here. The DPS is really good. The pulls are happening, and I'm gonna agree for DPS here because I can see that it's about to be a win. And we just CC at this point, and we pretty much got it because yeah, we're gonna burst the boss when they've got the break bar, and just hit it really hard. 2% is still quite a distance, but I think we're gonna make it because yeah, it's only 2%. So just hitting it as hard as I can, and the crates despawn because we've got the achievement there. So if you like this kind of content, then like the video, subscribe for more, and I will see you all next time.